So, is that working now? That should be working now. If it is working now, that would be very useful. So, hopefully, yes, right, we've got sound, and I don't know what that buzzing is. Let me do that. Oh, right. Let's do that. I think that's fixed it. Right. So, hopefully, horrible noise. Right, apologies to you all then, right? You know what I'm going to have to do? I'm going to have to scratch all of that and start again. Very strange. I don't know why there was no sound. What we'll do, let's get back to where we were. So, we'll start at the beginning. We've had, first of all, welcome to everyone. Welcome if this is your first time you've visited, then welcome. And if you're visiting again, obviously if you're a repeat offender, then you're very, very welcome. What we have is we have a comment here, and it's the first comment we've ever had to our stream. And it says, from one user, it says, how do I encourage a friend to go to church? I want to share my experiences of how I love to tell my love for Jesus. She doesn't want to talk about it, sadly. And so I came up with, and I know I've gone through this, but actually it's fine because I've already practiced this now. And so I came up with 4 pieces of advice. The first piece of advice I suggested was that the friend who's reluctant to go to church, or who you're encouraging to go to church, what I would probably do is introduce them to some of my friends from church. Because you're a friend of hers, she's a friend of yours, she's obviously an excellent judge of character, and you know you're a good friend of hers, and she, I think, may well appreciate being introduced to other folk who are decent, your friends, and she may well be willing to meet your friends in a social setting, in a kind of fellowship style setting, and that's one way of getting her comfortable with people who do go to church. And she might find that after she knows several people who go to the same church, several people who are Christians, she might decide, well, if it's good enough for them, I'll go along and check it out. So that might be the first thing, looking at the friendship and seeing all of that. So that's number one. The second thing I suggested was that listen to her and her reasons for not wanting to go to church, and explain to her that you're not going to push her to the point that your friendship is destroyed or broken, but that you are available and you are there for when she needs information, advice, or guidance. And if she wants to know more, she knows where you are, right? And that leaves the ball in her court. But maybe that's not proactive enough. I don't know. It's up to you. The third thing that I suggested was picking up this book, which is a book I've received today in the post. It's How Not to Read the Bible by Dan Kimball. And one of the things that Dan does is he goes through lots of different arguments which people who don't go to church or don't have a faith in Jesus Christ use. They use verses from the Bible to justify their reasons for not having a faith very often. And if they are hanging their hat on specific verses in the Bible which maybe they perceive as being anti-women or anti-science or pro-violence or pro-slavery or any of those other things which we know do exist within the Bible, then what Dan has done is he's written some very robust arguments, which are, and they're not arguments, what I mean, he's outlined reasons why many of these things don't really apply anymore. They did, they don't anymore in today's society. And he does that in a way which is very faithful to the Bible. He uses scripture to outline his arguments, and it's basically on the premise of, if you're going to grab a verse from the Bible and try and use that as a reason not to follow the Bible, then you're taking something out of context. Okay, and his example, which I've got here, this is just in the first couple of pages. One of the let me find the argument that I had. Right, it says. So one of the things that Dan does is he uses. He cites a famous line from the Star Wars movie. And the famous line from Star Wars, and I don't know if you know Star Wars, and I don't know if you're a fan of Star Wars, but I am. Forgive me. I like Star Trek as well. So if you're a Trekkie, I'm not all bad. I quite like that too. Anyway, he uses a Star Wars line, and it says, "Just for once, let me look on you with my own eyes." Now, taken in isolation, this line makes no sense. But if you know who spoke it, and the character in the movie who spoke it is Darth Vader, and if you know who he's speaking to, and the character he's speaking to is Luke Skywalker, his son, and he's saying it as he's taking his visor off, his big hat thing off, because he's dying, just after Luke has found out that he is his father. Okay? Now, and Darth Vader, had never properly seen his son without this big visory thing on. So, out of context, the line makes no sense. In context, in the movie, it makes absolute sense, and we can put some meat on the bones. And this whole book is dedicated to providing, Christians on the one hand, so that they can engage in these conversations about, what bits and pieces are absolutely relevant to us these days in context, and what bits taken in isolation, they make no sense. And that's okay to say, in isolation, it makes no sense. Give it some broader perspective, give it some broader context, and it starts to make sense. And if that's something that your friend is willing or able to have a conversation about, have a bit of a debate about, then you may well be in luck. So I then replied to the person who left the comment saying, "I have attempted to answer the question in the transmission this evening. If I can be of any more help, just get in touch again." Now, then we came over to this thing which had been sent by an old colleague of mine, a colleague called Jason, who I worked for several years with homelessness in Canterbury. And Jason is as solid as the day is long. Honestly, a very reliable, very loyal colleague. And he knew that I was having a bit of a tough time a couple of weeks ago, leading up to my mother's birthday, and we were having a chat on WhatsApp, and I was saying, it's pretty tough over here, and I'm a bit overstretched, a bit overworked, and a bit tired, and my mum's birthday, and all of this stuff going on. And he sent this in the post, and it's an original Times supplement relating to the first ascent of Mount Everest, and from 1953, which I tell you what, I mean, it makes me, and don't get me wrong, there is some context here. I used to be, I'm not sure even if my if my dues have been paid for the year, but if they haven't, then they will be. But I used to be a fellow of the Royal Geographical Society, and I've done my own fair share of climbing and walking in the UK specifically, and to see that is amazing. It's anyone who knows the RGS will know what I mean. It's extraordinary. So, look, Jason, thank you so much. It's very, very kind of you. And I'm going to I wanted to mention it because I was a bit overwhelmed. And I've only just opened it about an hour ago. And I still feel rather emotional about it. It's incredible. So, where were we? We were before the sound issue, before the comment, which is so marvellous. I can't believe we've had our first proper comment. We did have an agenda, and the agenda was to talk about safeguarding first. One of the things that I think I spoke to you about yesterday was that I had done a basic awareness course in safeguarding with the Church of England, and I shared with folk, with all of you, the link which I had, which is from the safeguarding training portal, and I'm going to share that with you all again because it's very good. So there that is. And you're able, if you're watching this in Twitch, you'll be able to use that to get access to that website, and you can register. And there's some really good free training, so that's available. And today I did the foundation course, and I also did another safeguarding course online, which was about recruitment and personnel, so recruitment and people management. And so all of those courses are certified courses. You get little completion certificates, and you get a little badge in the portal and stuff. So that's all really very, very good. And it means now that I feel more ready, more capable to talk about safeguarding, which again is one of the arguments some folk who don't go to church will use as a reason to not go to church, and that's specifically relating to the many, many scandals worldwide relating to abuse of not just children but vulnerable adults too. And really it's something that the only way to deal with it is by having a conversation about it, by ripping it open, however unpleasant, and saying, yes, it was an outrage what happened. It is an outrage when it happens. And whenever folk are caught, then, the long arm of the law is called, and there is an effort to bring them to justice, which is culturally within different institutions around the world, maybe something which didn't used to happen, but needs to be what happens these days, very robustly, and in some cases, quite aggressively, in order to protect the most vulnerable people who we see in our churches. So very, very interesting. And so I had a chat to Father David on WhatsApp today, and he confirmed that seeing as I've done the courses, then we need someone as a safeguarding officer, and until there's somebody else better qualified to do it, then can I do it? And so with pleasure I said yes, which is great. Very hooray! So that's one more thing. What that actually means is that there's a fair amount of work to be begun, to be started in terms of creating some safe working safeguarding policies, some procedures around how we engage with folk. The door's open, but we need to know who's coming through the door, right? Especially if they're looking to do work and volunteer within the church, which I think increasingly That's what we will need to get more folk involved in doing. So that's very exciting. So that's that. The next thing I was going to do was talk about Dan Kimball's book, but I've done that off the bat because of the comment in the chat box. So I feel like we've taken care of Dan Kimball reasonably. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to put Dan Kimball's book aside, although I'm very excited to read it. And I'm sure in the future, once we have finished Tillich, then what I would like to be doing is actually chunking through some of these other books we've got. So whether it's the John Pritchard's The Life and Work of a Priest, because I think that's a brilliant book and a very easy read, and I think we can chunk through that in a couple of weeks. And then after that, maybe we could go through Dan Kimball's books, especially if there's engagement, especially if people are commenting and talking to us. Then it makes life much easier for me to create agendas and chat about something that's going to be useful for other folk. And so what that does is it brings us very neatly to the time when we come to Tillich. So I'm reaching forward to get Tillich. Tillich's kept in a very special place where I can just reach it every evening. And we've got Paul Tillich's, for those of you who don't know what we do here, there is Paul Tillich's Systematic Theology. And Paul Tillich's Systematic Theology, it's 427 pages, and I've been tasked to read it by Father Tom. And Father Tom is the former chaplain of St. George's. Lovely man, and I get to meet with him every Tuesday for about 45 minutes or an hour. And I actually really value the time that I spend with Father Tom. It's very good to hear opinions which maybe I don't always share, and from someone who's got very strong opinions, and it's a good conversation, you know, and it's one of those conversations where it doesn't happen often these days, especially on Facebook, especially on social media. The idea, the principle that maybe we don't agree, but we can still be friends, right? Doesn't happen often these days. But here we are, Tom, Father Tom and I get to meet once a week on a Tuesday, and it's great. So he's told me to read Tillich, and I've got until Easter, which actually is later next year. So I've got lots of time. So, but nevertheless, we're going to go through 2 pages a night until we've finished Tillich. Okay, it's really tough. It's the style of writing. I don't know if many of you have read Tillich, but certainly probably most of you have heard me reading Tillich. It's difficult to get into, right? The language is not so user friendly, and you know, he's obviously a brilliant man. He's obviously one of these real academics, a real academic theologian who spent so much of his life sitting around other academics, having a chat in, you know, university or whatever, and he's written, he's, you know, outpoured some incredible thoughts, incredible notions. Now, of course, in the index, it's quite interesting because this book was written and published in the late 70s. And in the index, Tillich is quite clear that as soon as a theological system is published, it starts to go out of date. It's only really as good as the next theological system which comes along, because it's written of its time, and, you know, time moves on. But here we are. I think it was probably published. Let me have a look. I think it was 78. It was published. So a couple of years after 71. There you are. So this one's a 71. He first produced the 3 volumes in 67. So there you are. It was the late 60s, but it was 71 when this one was printed. And anyway, now let's get on. We are in the chapter called The Reality of Revelation. And we are up to section 11, the final revelation, overcoming the conflict between formalism and emotionalism. So, when the mystery of being appears in a revelatory experience, the whole of the person's life participates. This means that reason is present, both structurally and emotionally, and that there is no conflict between these two elements. That which is the mystery of being and meaning is, at the same time, the ground of its rational structure and the power of our emotional participation in it. This refers to all functions of reason. Here, it will be applied to the cognitive function alone. The problem of cognitive reason lies in the conflict between the element of union and the element of detachment in every cognitive act. Technical reason has given a tremendous preponderance to the side of detachment. What cannot be grasped by analytic reasoning is relegated to emotion. All the relevant problems of existence are thrown out of the realm of knowledge and into the formless realm of emotion. Assertions about the meaning of life and the depth of reason are denied any true value. Not only myth and cult, but also aesthetic intuitions and communal relations are excluded from reason and cognition. They are considered to be emotional effusions without validity and criteria. There are Protestant theologians who accept this separation of form and emotion in terms of a misrepresentation. They put religion into the realm of mere emotion, but in doing so, they deny the power of final revelation to overcome the split between form and emotion, cognitive detachment and cognitive union. Early classical theologians believed in the power of final revelation to overcome this split. They used the concept. Daniel Anderson. Tola Pully is now following. Lovely. Thank you, Daniel, for your following. That's lovely. Do always follow the URL to Twitch. Follow us in Twitch. You get a much better stream in Twitch than Facebook. I know it goes down in Facebook sometimes. But anyway, let's carry on. Early classical theologians believed in the power of final revelation to overcome this split. They used the concept, ognosis. I can't read it. Right? I need assistance with a Greek word. So it's Gnosis. Gnosis. I don't know. Which means cognitive as well as mystical and sexual union. Gnosis does not contradict episteme, detached scientific knowledge. There can be no conflict between there can be no conflict because the same Logos who taught the philosophers and legislators is the source of final revelation and teaches the Christian theologians. This solution of the Alexandrian school appears again and again in the history of the Christian thought, either transformed or attacked. Whenever it is accepted, though in many variations, the final revelation is considered to be that which conquers the conflict between theological and scientific knowledge. The implicity also the conflict between emotion and form. Whatever the Alexandrian solution is rejected, the conflict between the two sides is deepened and made permanent. This happened in the medieval development from Duns Scotus to Occam, in some expressions of the revelation theology, in Pascal, in the neo-orthodox theology, and on the opposite side, in naturalism and empiricism. In a surprising alliance, orthodox theologians and rationalists deny the reunion of form and emotion in the final revelation. They deny the healing power of revelation in the conflicts of cognitive reason. But if final revelation is unable to heal the splits of cognitive reason, how could it heal the splits of reason in any of its functions? There cannot simultaneously be a reunited heart and an eternally split mind. Either healing embraces the cognitive function or nothing is healed. It is one of the merits of existential philosophy that it endeavours to reunite union and detachment. Certainly, the emphasis is on union and participation, but detachment is not excluded. Otherwise, existentialism would not be a philosophy, but only a set of emotional exclamations. Emotions within the cognitive realm does not deform a given structure. It opens it up. Yet it must be admitted that emotional distortions of truth occur incessantly. Passion, libido, will to power, rationalization, and ideology are the most persistent enemies of truth. It is understandable that emotion as such has been denounced as the arch enemy of knowledge. But this leads to the consequence that in order to protect knowledge itself, relevant knowledge has to be eliminated. It is the claim of final revelation that ultimately relevant knowledge is beyond this alternative. That which can be grasped only with infinite passion is identical with that which appears as the criterion in every act of rational knowledge. If it could not make this claim, Christianity would have to abdicate, or it would become an instrument of the suppression of truth. The ultimate concern about the final revelation is as radically rational as it is radically emotional, and neither side can be eliminated without destructive consequences. The conquest of the conflicts of existential reason is what can be called saved reason. Actual reason needs salvation, as do all the other sides of man's nature and of reality generally. Reason is not excluded from the healing power of the new being in Jesus as the Christ. Theonomous reason beyond the conflict of absolutism and relativism, of formalism and emotionalism. This is reason in revelation. Reason in revelation is neither confirmed in its state of conflict nor denied in its essential structure. But its essential structure is re-established under the conditions of existence, fragmentarily, yet really and in power. Religion and theology, therefore, should never attack reason as such, just as they should not attack the world as such or man as such. Undiscerning attacks of this kind drive Christianity into the Manichaean camp, and much theological negativism about reason is more Manichaean than Christian. A final word about the nature of theology can be said on the basis of the description of reason in revelation and salvation. Theology must use theonomous reason in order to explain the Christian message. This includes the fact that the conflict between the receiving and the shaping functions of reason is conquered in theological work. No one was more aware of this fact than the early Franciscan school, represented, for instance, by Alexander of Hales. They called theology a practical knowledge, pointing to what today perhaps more adequately is called existential knowledge. It is unfortunate that ever since the day of Thomas Aquinas, the emphasis increasingly has been lost, together with the general loss of theonomy in all realms of life, and that the reformers combined their rediscovery of the existential character of theology with a badly defined rejection of reason. If it is understood that reason receives revelation, and that it is an object of salvation like every other element of reality, a theology which uses theonomous reason may again be possible. So there we are. We've done 3 pages of Tillich today. We're going to stop before we start number 12. So we've done very good, and hopefully you found that as insightful and useful as I did. No doubt I will be speaking to Father Tom about that on Tuesday and having a bit of a debate about it, because that's what we do, which is marvellous. Now, it has got to time. Apologies about the sound. I don't know what happened with the sound at the beginning of this transmission, so we're going to have to go back to basics. This microphone, which is a beast, for whatever reason, has decided not to work. So we're going to have to work out what's happened and why that is. It was working this morning. It's just not working now. It's been working all day. So I don't know what's happened between this afternoon, this evening, and now. And I was using it half an hour before I came on air. So who knows? Who knows? Now, as is our tradition, we always go to the daily prayer page of the Church of England, and what I will do is share the commonworship.com, daily.commonworship.com link with you all here, and then you can use that if you want to. And what we're going to do is nip down to the collect of the nighttime prayer, and we will say the collect. Let your merciful ears, O Lord, be open to the prayers of your humble servants, and that they may obtain their petitions. Make them to ask such things as shall please you. Through Jesus Christ, your Son, our Lord, who is alive and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. So thank you very much for joining me today. Apologies, sincere apologies for the sound. I will fix that. Hopefully the sound at the moment is not too bad, but it's not as good as it normally is. I know that much. So, yeah, thank you very much. And without further ado, I'm going to say, with prayers and best wishes,